When it comes to the new collaborative album from Drake and partynextdoor, SSS for You, one thing is clear. Looking at Drake's performance on this project, with the pressure on him higher than ever, it seems like he didn't fully consider his words. From cringeworthy lines to moments where he disses people he shouldn't be messing with, it's obvious that in this moment, Drake is trying to reshape the narrative around rap beef, but is doing it in a way that's only making things worse for him. He's acting as though he's upset about losing to Kendrick Lamar, as if the real issue is that he didn't come out on top in their previous feud. Despite playing the victim in an attempt to sway people into his corner, Drake is still throwing jabs at people, not just at Joe Budden, but at others too. Even after taking multiple LS and learning plenty of tough lessons, particularly from Kendrick Lamar, Drake is still taking aim at him on this album. And frankly, the disses directed at Kendrick are some of the weakest he's ever dropped. What's becoming clear is that, from Kendrick to the other figures is still trying to pick fights with, Drake's strategy here isn't going to end well for him. But before we dive deeper, make sure to like and subscribe. It's more important now than ever, especially with how upset Drake's fans are with what I'm saying. They'd rather you didn't hear this, but I'm just telling it like it is. Now, looking at the album as a whole, it's definitely causing a lot of noise because people are eager to see just how far Drake has fallen in this era. And before his fans start claiming he's back on top, they need to acknowledge something important. Unless an album is genuinely quality-driven, like Kendrick Lamar's GNX, the kind of music Drake is putting out here won't have lasting power. His recent music isn't connecting with anyone outside of his loyal fan base, who seem desperate for anything, and as Kendrick Lamar would say, the effort Drake's put in just isn't enough. One of the major reasons this album misses the mark is because Drake failed to present a consistent message or version of himself that resonates with listeners on a deeper level. On this album, Drake is only reinforcing why so many hip-hop fans have completely moved on from him. On one hand, he's once again playing the victim card, a role he's been stuck in ever since his beef with Kendrick Lamar. But then, on the other hand, he's still trying to act tough, believing he can say whatever he wants and challenge anyone. These conflicting personas create a confusing mess on the album. Drake raps about how he's done with beef and just wants to have a good time. Yet in the very next breath, he contradicts himself by saying he can't shake the rap beefs and is committed to standing his ground. With all that's at stake, especially for an artist of Drake's caliber, this lack of cohesion is honestly just embarrassing from an artistic standpoint. This confusion is nowhere more evident than on the track, Give Me a Hug. Here, Drake gives his most lyrical performance since the entire beef saga. And while many would think that a return to solid rapping would be a good thing, the reality is it just shows how lost and out of touch he's become. Instead of showcasing his skills in a meaningful way, he ends up revealing just how disconnected he is from what's really going on. Throughout the song, Drake throws in a string of disses aimed squarely at Kendrick Lamar. Once again, in his effort to downplay the impact of Kendrick Lamar's career and what their beef really did to him, Drake tries to dismiss the real consequences of it all. Sure, he can spit these lines and act like everything's fine, but we've all seen the truth play out. Just look at the Grammys and the Super Bowl. The reality is clear. Drake has taken a huge L, and it's evident in how he's been responding to it. But even these lines are just the tip of the iceberg, setting the stage for what's about to get even worse from here. Drake seems to be taking shots at Kendrick Lamar here, trying to downplay everything Kendrick has done in his influence as the leader of hip-hop. He throws in a line about how girls and dancers now need to have a dictionary in hand, clearly trying to mock Kendrick for having substance in his music and maintaining a high level of lyrical quality, even when making big hits. While we can all see what angle Drake's playing, it simply doesn't land. If anything, this only distances him further from hip-hop, because it shows he doesn't really respect the genre or what made it great in the first place. After taking shots at Kendrick, Drake spirals even more on the second half of this track. To start the verse, Drake goes off on a tangent, claiming that he's more hip-hop than anyone else, based on random things that make him believe he's the most influential rapper of his generation. Even if Drake's experiences are valid, anyone who truly loves hip-hop and wants to see it thrive wouldn't bring paperwork into rap beef. Especially when, on the same track, he's dissing people and trying to come across as tough. This just makes him look worse, as Drake contradicts his own claims in Not Like Us by escalating more beefs, this time with Joe Budden. He even name-drops one of Joe's co-hosts, Melissa Ford, implying he doesn't like seeing her next to Joe in a much harsher way than I'm describing. especially since she's also from the 6. And after dissing Joe, who's retired from rapping, I'm sure he'll get his own back just from his podcast. Drake then loops back to Kendrick, throwing vague shots at him again, claiming that while Kendrick's album GNX is out, his own work is harder. Now, without diving too deep into the whole record, because there's just not enough time for that, it doesn't take a genius to figure out which album is leaving a bigger impact and which one stands as the stronger piece of music. On this track, Drake continues to spiral, trying to play a new tough guy role, but we all know he's not the person he thinks he is. In fact, most people see him quite differently. Throughout this album and the entire rollout so far, Drake has been trying to step on Kendrick Lamar's achievements, attempting to deliver a winning diss months after their musical back and forth has already ended, when Kendrick's impact has only continued to grow. Drake's desperation becomes most obvious later on this album when he says, "We're not like them, and they're not like us." He seems to think this is clever, as if he's getting ahead of the joke and somehow responding to everything Kendrick has done to him. But let's be real, that line can't change the fact that the song it references, Back to Back, has become a cultural phenomenon. It's been out for months, approaching diamond status, and has made a bigger impact than anything Drake's dropped in years. No small line is going to erase what Kendrick's track has done to Drake's reputation. What's even more telling is how, throughout this album, Drake repeatedly highlights the sad state of his life, how he's stuck in a cycle of immaturity, surrounded by shallow and empty experiences. At this point, that's hardly something to brag about. If anything, it only makes Kendrick's work look even better, especially since Drake's behavior throughout this album proves why he lost the beef with Kendrick so decisively. People are simply tired of him playing the same old games. As Drake bounces between different personas, he can't just leave his disses confined to the music. No, he has to escalate things, making an even bigger mess of everything. He takes another jab at Kendrick after he sweeps the Grammys, mocking the significance of the biggest award in music. Drake claims he's using his own Grammy as a doorstop, clearly trying to downplay Kendrick's success and pretend he doesn't care about the recognition Kendrick received. But let's not forget, this is the same guy who, not too long ago, was proudly flaunting his own Grammys in his Tootsie Slide video. The reality is clear. Drake's attitude is performative. He's only downplaying Kendrick's accomplishments to dismiss him, not because he's actually indifferent. What we're seeing here is Drake trying to start a new era in his career. But it's obvious he's still stuck in the same old mindset he had during the Nothing Was the Same and Take Care days. Sure, Drake fans are excited now because they have an album to support, and the buzz around it is strong because people are curious to see what direction his career is heading. But the truth is, this album isn't showing any growth or evolution in his music. It feels like he's regressing, not moving forward. Despite what his fans want to believe, this project won't have lasting power. And as for Drake still trying to stir up beefs, whether it's with Joe Budden or Kendrick, Joe had it right before the album even dropped. Don't start a beef when you're already past your prime and things are clearly winding down. Drake's continued attempts to discredit Kendrick Lamar, beyond going after someone like Joe Budden, are honestly just pathetic at this point. When it comes to trying to diminish what Kendrick has achieved, there's a level of competition that should encourage pushing each other's limits, but it's a whole other thing to act like Kendrick's Super Bowl performance, Grammy sweep, and cultural influence don't matter. It's clear how much Kendrick's victory in this beef has shifted the game, and pretending these accomplishments don't count only makes Drake look worse. At the end of the day, no amount of dissing Kendrick or trying to ignore the reality of his impact is going to work in Drake's favor. By neglecting Kendrick's success and underestimating him as an artist, Drake looks like he's just trying to protect his ego while pointing fingers at others. What's really hurting Drake's career is his inability to take a solid stance or act with any integrity. His constant flip-flopping is why things are falling apart for him. While I doubt Kendrick will respond to any of this, he's already said everything he needs to, especially with that game over message at the end of the Super Bowl halftime show. It's still fascinating to think about how all of this is going to affect Drake in the long run. It's only going to get worse for him. So now, I want to hear from you. What do you think about Drake's disses on this album? Are you tired of him playing this strange game? What do you think is going to happen next? I can't wait to hear your thoughts. And if you've made it this far in the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps me out, especially since the Drake fans don't want you hearing this. And if you want to see why nearly everyone except his diehard fans is turned off by this album, Check out the suggested video.